Jagpreet, good morning. How are you, sir?
Morning, Roberta. Doing great. Doing great today.
All right, right. Tell us who you are first and foremost. How you got your start organizing and then leaning into what drum is and isn't.
Great. Yeah. So my name is Jagpreet Singh. I'm the political director at Drum Beats. We are a sister organization of Drum that organizes working class South Asian Indo-Caribbean New Yorkers across New York City. I actually got my start as a tenant organizer way back in 2012. Um, Worked at a couple of places and then joined Chaya CDC back in 2015, where was organized tenants in South Asian buildings for the most part. We opened up a center in Richmond Hill, spent about 5 years there, worked alongside Zoran for about a year as well. After that, I managed a city council campaign here in Jackson Heights. And then since 2021, I've been the political director at Drum. At Drum, we organize, like I said, working class South Asian Indo-Caribbean folks, folks who are construction workers, taxi drivers, work in the healthcare industry, are work at cleaning in stores, folks who are generally sideswiped, pushed to the side as far as conversations about our communities go, and make sure that they have the power and they have the voice to be able to speak up for their own issues and for their own rights.
Aneta, is she still at Shia?
I believe she still is at Chai.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
she
She
was
is. She
my
is.
boss.
She's a friend. She's a friend.
Oh, great.
We during Ida, we talked quite often. Her and I, Hurricane Ida, my time in government. Jagpreet, you know what everyone wants to talk about. Let's not
Campaign,
make believe.
campaign,
Let's not make believe here, right?
for sure.
Let's get to the meat and potatoes.
Uh,
Zoran, ma'am, Danny.
yes, sir.
Let's take a walk down memory lane. When did you meet Zoran? Uh, how did you meet Zoran? And let's start there.
For sure. I believe it was about 6 or 7 years ago where he started working at Chaya as the foreclosure prevention counselor. Chai was one of the is the only organization that really works with South Asian homeowners, especially around making sure that we're not priced out of our own neighborhoods. Foreclosure and deed theft issues along these lines are a big deal, and Zoran had come in to kind of organize around this, work with homeowners, and make sure that they knew about their rights. So when I was working out of our Richmond Hill office, Zoran would come down at least once a week, and one of his primary jobs was to look at the list of people who are on the foreclosure list. Their homes are being sold off by the city, and go and knock on doors and make sure that they were aware of what's happening in their communities, what's happening to their home, and being able to help them throughout the process. So we got pretty close during our time at Chaya, especially around pre-pandemic. It used to be just the two of us at the Richmond Hill office for a while. I got to know him. He was a great guy, very jovial, very happy. Somebody who brought a lot of excitement into the room, and have been a pleasure to know him since then.
All right, so talk about the campaign. Did you work on his assembly race?
Briefly, I did a little bit of petitioning for him. I did some postcards, a little bit of door knocking. But a lot of my focus at that time was another friend of both of ours, Mahfouzul Islam, who's running against David Wepburn in District 24. So I did spend a lot more time assisting Mahfouzul with his race, but helped out Zoran where we could, especially since the story was a little bit closer to me at that point. So did really like going out there, knocking on some doors, and then having some great food in the story afterwards.
Talk about this campaign now. How did the endorsement come about, and how early were you having these discussions with Zoran about running or potentially running or exploring a run? And are you a member of the DSA?
I am a member of DSA. I've been a member of DSA since 2020, for a while, especially within the Queen's work that we do here. But Zoran had approached Drum Beats back in, I believe, August of last year. He wasn't the only mayoral candidate who had approached us. There were two others who had approached us around the same time.
Name names.
Sure, it was Brad Lander and Jessica Ramos.
Okay.
So at the same time, we were also working with some of our partners, Cav Voice, who organizes East and South Asian tenants mostly in Astoria and Chinatown, as well as New York Communities for Change, who works with a lot of Black and Latino tenants and working class communities. And we saw a shift, that there needed to be something that brought together our working class members, mostly immigrant, almost all of them renters, many of them with various levels of immigration status, to really make a difference and for the first time be able to express their voice for a preference of a candidate. And we definitely learned a lot of lessons from 2021, where we all saw that the progressives, the left, really didn't coalesce around a candidate early enough and strong enough to where we got the results that we have today with a mayor like Eric Adams. So the three of our organizations came together. We did an endorsement process. We interviewed the three candidates, and at the end of the day, all of our members, almost unanimously between the three organizations, had decided to endorse Zoran Mamdani.
How many members do you have, Trump?
We have
Active members.
we have about 2,000 members, paper members, and I would say that about 300 of them are leaders, so are the
Okay.
most active. But we have anywhere from like 1,000 to 1,500 showing up yearly to our various events.
Jagpreet, I want you to explain the dynamics within the South Asian community. I'll give you an example. My primary care physician is Indian from India, and I asked him, if there was a sense of pride in the fact that Zohran Mamdani potentially could be the first South Asian, right, immigrant, my immigrant mayor of New York City, and he brought up some issues that the Hindus had with Zoran. And obviously, I'm not privy to any of that information, but I know amongst Latinos, we have our own politics, right? Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Ecuadorians, 'cause we're not monolithic, right? So, talk a little bit about how it was, how you brought everyone. Are you Sikh? Are you Muslim? Are you Hindu? What is your background?
Yeah, so my background is my parents are from Punjab in North India, and we are Sikh.
Okay.
Um, and across our membership, we
And that's
organize.
it. Then I want you to educate me here. So, how do you bring all these people together behind Zoran, and what are those dynamics? What are the issues there? Why would he bring that up, right?
For sure, for sure. I think so. In our base alone, we organize across various memberships. We have members from Nepal, India, Bhutan, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and also Indo-Caribbean countries like Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad. So these are a range of folks. They speak different languages, they practice different faiths, but there is something that ties them together at the end of the day, that working class identity, the having to struggle, work off your bone day by day, 7 days a week to provide for your family, to hope for a better life for your children, to make sure that they have a better life, better education than you did. And I think this ties all of our communities together, no matter who they are. And for sure, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no tension in the communities. There's a lot of historic tension for sure, tension from back home. But that's
Yeah.
one of the things about being
But
in the.
that's no different than But that's why I want you to explain what those things are, and how you all manage to bring everyone together for the common good, right? For the first, or to make history.
Yeah, for sure. I think South Asia historically has been rife with political and religious conflict in the past, but it's also been a home where synchronicity has existed, very much like we see here in New York, where Muslim and Hindu and Sikh neighbors are going to the same restaurants. Their children are at the same schools. They're going to the same community festivals. They're listening to very similar music. They're shopping in the very similar areas. If you go out to Jackson Heights, 3 blocks away from our office in Diversity Plaza, you're going to hear Bangla, Nepali, Hindi, Urdu. You're going to
I live
see.
I live I live on Woodside, just so you
Oh,
know. So
great. Oh,
right,
not too
yeah,
far away.
I
So
know that
you're
very well. And
very,
yeah, I grew up there, by the way. So I've been there
very
a
much
hu-
aware. And then a
long
place
time.
here like Jackson Heights as well. When I was younger, my family lived here, was predominantly Punjabi and Indian. Slowly over the years, it's gotten a lot more Bangladeshi, a lot more Nepali, a lot of the Indian and Pakistani folks have moved out. But it continues to be places like this continue to be a place where a lot of our communities are able to come together, celebrate together, be able to work together as well.
Jagpreet, talk a little bit about what candidates have missed in the past about the South Asian community. I mean, why was there a reluctance to sort of campaign, organize, or what? Why didn't they get it right? And who made the decision early on to go hard in the temples and right and do that outreach and register these folks? Talk a little bit about the organizing that went into that.
For sure. I mean, our community has been here for over 150 years. They've been part of the fabric of New York City, but more often than not, nobody's really reached out to them. There's been surface level attempts, and there are a number of community leaders, for better or for worse, who have created relationships with the folks in power, but often the relationship is just with them, and we hardly get to see our elected officials in our community. Maybe once a year when they're running for office, they'll come to our mandir, our gurdwara, our temple. They'll say, namaste, salam alaikum, sat sri akal, but that's all we get. More often than not, there hasn't been a development of leaders, of especially young leaders in our community as well, to want to aspire to run for office. Often we're getting more paltry positions. Maybe somebody's being appointed to a community board. Maybe somebody has been chosen by the party to be a district leader, but we're not seeing any concessions beyond that. On top of that, we also have a lot of issues that impact our communities that are working class issues. Something, for example, like the taxi driver issue. Yet the issues that when politicians come to our communities bring up is, oh, we want to like recognize your holiday, which is great. We want our holiday recognized, but we also want food on our table. We want cheaper rent. We want to make sure that our children, our next generation, are able to afford their education and stay here. So Zoran was in many ways one of the first politicians who came to our communities and didn't just speak about, here are, the language issues that you all care about, maybe the food issues you all care about, but no, these working class issues are our issues as well, and we need to see ourselves embodied within the fight for those issues. So I want to give credit to the campaign and Zoran, because this was one of the communities that they wanted to target early on and make sure that they were brought in, the South Asian, Indo-Caribbean communities, Muslim communities, which is why he wanted to make sure he spoke to an organization like ours. And within the campaign, they also brought on a South Asian Muslim field person to make sure that the on the ground efforts were being done, as well as somebody who did more of the political work with the community leaders and the institutions. And then we at Drum Beats employed a similar strategy, which we call like a pincer strategy, where we made sure to reach out to the grassroots communities through a variety of ways, whether at festivals, at events, things along those lines, but also made sure when a good number of our community members were starting to be on board, had already recognized Zoran, then we went to the community leaders and said, hey, your congregation is already supporting Zoran. Your members are already supporting Zoran. Your children are already supporting Zoran. You have to be on board now. You have no other choice. Even though you might be close to Cuomo or Adams or somebody else, our community is bought in. And if you're not bought in right now, that's going to end up being a problem, which worked out well because by the time Cuomo launched his campaign, it was March, the community leaders were already on board to Zoran's side. We had already done the work to bring them on. So it's difficult for more of the establishment candidates to start picking off the leaders like they had done in the past.
Numbers. Talk to me numbers. In years past in this primary, how give me numbers, right?
Yeah, for sure. So generally we see paltry numbers within our community. We have one of the lowest voter participation rates, not only within the primaries, but also within general elections. And one of the biggest shifts that we wanted to make was make sure that not only were we making sure that voters were coming out, but a large portion, over 50% of the South Asian community who is registered to vote, isn't registered to vote with a party. So a lot of our campaign pre-February, pre the Valentine's Day deadline, was to make sure that those that were registered to vote also voted within the party. Generally, we see maybe 20%, 19% of our community vote. But this time, the numbers have been blown out of the water. I'll give you one example in Kensington.
That's what I want to hear. Numbers.
So in Kensington, generally, we have maybe 20%, 21% of the Bangladeshi community who is registered to vote, vote. Very low numbers. This election, almost 50% of Bangladeshis who are registered to vote actually came out to vote. That's a higher number than white people who vote. We have never seen numbers like this before. Citywide, the participation of Bangladeshis in particular jumped up to 38%. And we saw similar numbers across the Pakistani community gained 12% extra voters. The Indian community gained 10% extra voters. And this is a statistic we're seeing across the spectrum. So it's not just in the more ethnic enclaves where we organize in, for example, Jackson Heights, Parkchester and the Bronx, Kensington and Brooklyn, but we're also seeing increases of South Asian numbers in places like Manhattan, where maybe it's a little bit more not middle class or lower class, but upper class South Asians. We're seeing increases of South Asian numbers in places like Williamsburg, Astoria, the Lower East Side, where you have a lot more of the more new incoming. You can call them transplant South Asians as well, but folks generally who don't vote in elections.
Jagpreet, how has gerrymandering impacted the electoral progress of South Asians? We
Yeah,
saw Assembly Member Jennifer Rajkumar, right? She came in, and that area is right growing, is South Asian and growing. And there are other parts of North Queens, Richmond Hill, that could potentially allow for a South Asian candidate. Talk a little bit about how the maps and the way they're drawn have sort of impacted the process and the progress of the South Asian. To your point, not these, no offense, these unpaid, you know, positions, party positions that we, I mean, if anybody who's been around long enough know. I mean, no disrespect, but the real job where you actually get to make decisions, pass, legislation, introduce legislation. But what is it? What are the lines being drawn a certain way? How does that impact the electing more South Asians?
for sure. So like I said, our community has been here for 150 years, and to this day, there's never been a district created specifically for the South Asian community. And that's not to say we haven't built neighborhoods. Richmond
No, no,
Hill,
but
yeah,
Jagpreet, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. What's the game plan? Is that part of the push now to say, hey, there's some talk about that, gerrymandering at the state right now because of what's happening in Texas. Now that Zoran has demonstrated some muscle there, just like the East Asians, right, in South
yeah,
Brooklyn are now making a strong play.
for sure.
It's not politics as usual anymore, though, in that part of town, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what's the game plan here? What are you doing?
For sure. I mean, so if you take a look at the electoral map of the areas that Zoran won, we've been thumping our chest for decades about this area called the Hillside Corridor, which runs on Hillside Avenue all the way from the Van Wyck basically to the Long Island border. And along this stretch of Hillside Avenue has historically been a number of South Asian communities, from Bangladeshis in the Bronx to Indo-Caribbeans in Hollis to Punjabis and Indians in Glen Oaks area. And again, we've been telling folks for years that this is a corridor that exists for our community, and this needs to be a district for us. Yet, decade after decade, the Hillside Corridor is broken down. Parts of it are given to one district, parts of it are given to another district, and we don't have the totality within the district to be able to elect anybody. And nobody, I think 5 years ago when we were testifying, one of the staff members of the redistricting commission was like, there is no Hillside Corridor. I don't know why you guys keep bringing this up. It's a very diverse area. But if you look at the electoral map now, you can see the Hillside Corridor from space. It's the part of East Queens that a strip runs along it, where our communities, again, whether they were Bengali who speak Bangla, whether they were Indo-Caribbean who speak a Guyanese Creolese, whether they were Punjabis who speak Punjabi, all came together to vote for Zoran. And this is one of the biggest indicators that we have a cohesive, tight community here. And the same goes for Richmond Hill area, South Ozone Park, similar for Kensington. But the biggest one I want to give an example for is Parkchester in the Bronx. It's the one area of the Bronx, especially in the Northeast Bronx, that came out very heavy for Zoran. This is an area where we have Bangladeshis living in rent stabilized apartments, living along the Parkchester condominiums. And again, for the last time around, we said we wanted to keep Parkchester and Westchester Square, the two Bangladeshi neighborhoods, together. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but it's a continuous yellow circle in the maps right now of the people who came out for Zoran. I got to mention that area is also, it is very heavily Bangladeshi, maybe 40% Bangladeshi, but it's also very heavy Latino. And what this shows us is that even though a lot of the outreach, at least the outreach that we did, was towards the South Asian community, our communities don't live in silos. This is New York City. Your Latino neighbors are talking to your South Asian neighbors in whatever English that they can, in whatever way that they can. Their kids are playing together. We're living in a community, right? So people are also talking to each other. Our outreach to the South Asian community also means that they're now validators for Zoran within their neighborhood. So I
Okay,
think these
so
are the sorts of things that we want, stories we want to tell.
okay, but I get the sort of narrative. What is the plan to change that, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. We're
That's
gonna
the only. That's the only. You know, we both know this business.
yeah,
That's the only language people understand in this universe is winning and losing.
for
You
sure. I think
demonstrate you can win. That you know you're not on the menu. You're at the table.
for sure.
So so what is
So
the play? What is the play to change that and to say, hey, like every other group, hey, it's our time. We want to sit at the table.
So I think the biggest issue of this is now that we have a community that's activated. So when it comes time for census and we need to make sure that our community are filling out the census, we have a much better validator in somebody like Zoran to be like, hey, everybody needs to fill out the census to make sure that our numbers are counted up. The other aspect of activating our community now for this election is that we get to keep reaching out to them. We get to keep being in contact with them. So when it comes time in 2030 for us to go out to testify at the commissions, when it comes time to write letters to the commission, to rally, we are going to keep our community activated to make sure that we have the numbers we need to make sure that, our power is being put forth, that we are getting a district in South Queens, that we are getting a district along the Hillside Corridor, that we are keeping our Parkchester communities together. The other aspect of this is that we need more elected officials to stand with us. A good example of this is that Zoran Mamdani, when it came to the assembly redistricting maps, even though he got what he wanted in his district, a number of organizations, including ours, told him, hey, South Queens, especially Richmond Hill, is still split into 4 separate assembly districts. This does not build our power. We're not even 30% in any of these districts. We need your help. Zoran was one of the only Democrat assembly members to vote down the map and then spoke up, saying that I'm doing this because the South Asian community, even though it's not one that I represent, it's one that I'm close to, is being gutted. And we need to make sure that we're standing up for them, speaking up for them. And now, hopefully, in 2030, we'll have a number of more assembly members and senators who are willing to stand with our community and vote down any map that's not going to benefit our community.
Jagpreet, let's talk about this race to the finish, leading up to November. What's your involvement currently, and what's the play from now until election day in November? And are you part of the transition, or is that extremely premature?
I think
What's
that
happening? What's the latest?
I think the transition conversations are still a little premature. We have a general
Yeah, yeah,
election to
yeah.
win. But we're involved. Like I told you
You're
before,
not measuring the curtains yet.
yeah, exactly. But like I told you before, 50% of our community is not registered with the party. So I'm telling folks they haven't seen the power of the South Asian community yet because it's still relatively untapped, and it's going to be this general election where we see it. But for sure, there's been a lot of places where we could have done better. There's parts of Southeast Queens where we have a large number of community members in South Jamaica and the Rockaways. There's places in the Bronx around Morris Park, around North Bronx where we could have done better. There's places in Staten Island where we have a large Sri Lankan community where we could have done better. And our goal is going to be to build with those communities, especially places like Staten Island, where we generally haven't had a reason in the past to build those communities, but now we have a reason to do so. And make sure
Can I,
that
but I,
we're
but can I ask you a question? When are you? Now I'm assuming now when these conversations are happening about how to get right, build the numbers, build the votes. Are you wearing your drum hat, or are you involved with the campaign as is, in terms of mobilizing and GOTV?
well, the camp drum beats is working
Or are
very
the two
closely
one
with
and the
the
same?
campaign. They're very
Okay,
similar at this
okay,
point.
okay.
But we are coordinating with them around making sure that we're outreaching within the South Asian communities. We work very closely with the Muslim director, with the South Asian Muslim director and the field folks, as well as with admin within the campaign to make sure that our communities are still continuing to be prioritized as we go into the general election. This was a very strong base for us, and we want to make sure that we are keeping them on our side, especially when we're going against somebody like Eric Adams. Cuomo isn't that great of a retail politician when it comes to our communities, especially, and he didn't do a good job of going to the events, of doing the things during the primary. But Adams is a different animal all on its own, right? He hosts flag raising, he goes to events, he wears ethnic clothing. He's the one who's going to be the first to say salam alaikum or namaste and make sure people are listening. Thankfully, we have a great candidate in Zoran, who I would say is much better than Adams in doing the retail work along those lines.
It's interesting you mentioned that. The last poll has Mayor Adams at 7%, below Curtis Lewa. But you know, I do understand your point of view. This is not over till it's over. It's a lot of time left on the clock. So
For sure.
it's
And
constant vigilance always when you're campaigning.
somebody like Eric Adams has a lot of friends. He's going to be able to woo over, pull in, and our goal is to make sure that, yeah, if one or two or three community leaders go over to his side, that's no big deal because our work, and again, for the first time, we're going past the community leaders or the general activators of the community and going directly to the community, which is why we do all of our outreach in language. It's in Bangla, it's in Punjabi, it's in Hindi, Urdu. We're doing our phone banking in language. We're going to events and making sure that we're sending people there who are part of the community so we can move past this sense that you need to just find the five right people from each community who are going to turn people out, but we're taking the message directly to folks, which is also what makes Zoran a great candidate because he's willing to go directly into the crowds. He's willing to go to the events that aren't going to have like 1,000 people who are going to know his name, but he's willing to go there and make sure people understand who he is and what he's fighting for.
Jagpreet, we're at the time now, and I don't want to keep you longer because you're in campaign mode here.
For sure.
Anything you want to add that I forgot to ask you?
I think we covered everything.
Cool, cool. Thank you, Jagpreet. Hopefully this won't be the last time, and all the best to you. Okay.
Thank you, Roberto.